Hello, and welcome to Crosspoint Community Church. I'm Robert.
And I'm Nathaniel.
And I'm Brandon, and this is what you need to know this week.
If you're a first-time guest and you're wondering what we're all about, our mission here is to simply lead people to be passionate followers of Christ. We do this by creating an environment like this one, where anyone can come and hear the incredibly important message that God created us, loves us, and most importantly, wants to have a good relationship with us. So if you know anyone, co-worker, friend, family, that needs to hear this message, we've created an environment for them.
You're wondering what those boxes is when you walked in. Over there, or over there, that's TOM. Stands for Tithes, Offerings, and Missions. And this is how we take offering here at Crosspoint.
In 2 weeks, we'll be celebrating Easter Sunday. And this Easter, we're going 3D with it. So this would be a great opportunity to invite a friend or somebody just to come along. And remember, first service 9:15, second service 10:45. Again, that's April 8th, first service 9:15, second service 10:45. You don't want to miss it. If you're interested in leading, hosting, or joining a small group, sign-ups will be going on over the next 2 weeks, and you can pick up a card at the welcome table.
Next Sunday, we're having an Easter egg hunt for Kid XP from birth all the way to 5th grade, right out here at the Commons area, starting at 5 o'clock. You don't want to miss it.
Woo!
What are you doing?
Oh, I'm just getting pumped up for the Easter egg hunt, you know, getting my rabbit on. Tonight at 6 o'clock is Student Takeover. You don't want to miss it. Come on out for pizza, pop. Don't forget about our small groups. Hope to see you there.
Today we're continuing our series, Easy Jesus and the Ordinary Life. And we're going to continue talking about how we take the hard parts out of the Bible and we're left with an easy Jesus and a boring life.
My life's boring.
Well, this series is just for you. I heard we're starting part 2, the Colliseum.
Well, that's all we got in the Need to Know video this week. If you have any questions, you can come out to the welcome table, or you can check out our website, crosspointonline.net, or you can check out the new app.
Our story today starts with the central figure of Jesus. Jesus is the most important character in the story, which we should know because we're in church, so that would make sense. But when Jesus comes on the scene, the most common name that he is referred to as is the Son of David. And people over and over again will refer to him not just as Jesus, not just as the Messiah, but as the Son of David. And the interesting thing is when they referred to him as the Son of David, it was most commonly with a question that they were asking. And it would be, Son of David, what should we do about this? Or, Son of David, what do you think about this? Or, Son of David, who's going to heaven? Or, what should we do about these people? Or, how should I respond here? And the interesting thing is, if you read it closely, it wasn't so much a statement that they were making that he was the Son of David. Now, that's important, because we're told that the Messiah, the one who would lead people out of the empire of bricks, would be from a descendant of David, that they would be from David's line. And so they're not just acknowledging that, they're actually asking a question. They're asking him which son of David he'll actually be. Because David had another very, very famous son, his son Solomon. And we saw last week that Solomon did some incredible things. He was an amazing king. He was incredibly wise. He was really well liked by the people. And there are a lot of people at that point in time who thought that Solomon was indeed the Messiah. And it made sense. They went, obviously, he's a descendant of David. He's just one generation removed. He does these incredible things. He's the one who's going to save the people. But then he did something interesting. We talked about this, that he wanted to build a temple to God. And in order to do that, he put the people in slavery to build that temple. And that because of his actions and the actions of those that followed him, they moved the Israelites out of the city that God had promised them and into exile. And so when Jesus comes on and there's all this excitement and all this buzz about him, people keep calling him Son of David, and they're going, okay, which Son of David are you going to be? Are you going to be the Son of David like Solomon? Or are you going to be the Son of David like we had hoped for? They're really asking, which empire will you be a part of? And we talked about this. We said that there is an empire of bricks. This empire is about stuff. It's about what you can build. It's about what you can accomplish and what you can accumulate throughout your life. This empire is largely about you. It's focused on your needs and what you want to have happen. And this empire is built by power and force, by getting your way and forcing things through. And we said there's another empire that thinks of how it was supposed to work. This is an empire that's about God. It's not about me, it's about him. And this empire is about people, and it's about relationships, and it's about conducting, not in a way of power and force, but of grace and love. And so everybody's waiting to see, which empire are you going to live in, Jesus? And I want to clarify something real quick. When we talk about an empire of love, I think we get a picture in our mind that isn't exactly right. Because when I hear an empire of love personally, I think some things. I think like a mushy, gushy, ooey, gooey Valentine's Day, give everybody flowers and candies and hearts, and everybody's really nice to each other, and the only movies you can watch are Notting Hill and Runaway Bride and things like that. And I go, you know what, that empire, I do not want to be a part of that empire. But the empire of love is really, it's much harder than that. To be a part of the empire of love is about choosing what's often the most difficult thing. It's about if you're a kid, when your parent is always on your case, and they just keep riding you over and over again, and you do the one thing that you can do that's in your power. You rebel. You do what they don't want you to do. That's not being a part of the empire of love. It's about, as a parent, when your kid just keeps doing the same stupid thing over and over again, and you want nothing more than to take them by the collar and pull them close and tell them what a moron they are. It's about, in that moment, being patient and being kind. It's about, as a spouse, whenever that person who you married, who you said vows with, whenever they just seem different. They don't seem like the same person who you stood before everyone in front of on your wedding day. They've changed over the years. And you've got options. You could run, but you don't really like that option. And so you instead choose to stay, but you just go, I'm just going to do my thing. I mean, they do this, they do this, they do that. I'm just going to do what I want. It's about, instead of making that choice, the empire of love is about caring and giving and sacrificing in that moment. You see, we say an empire of love, and we think, oh, that's so warm and nice. But it's actually really, really hard. And it's about making the hard choice. It's about when there's that person who constantly bothers you, who just seems like a moron, instead of telling them what a moron they are, or instead of telling your friends what a moron they are, it's about treating them with respect and kindness, even when you don't feel like they deserve it. And when Jesus comes on the scene, that's the scene that's set, and everybody's going, okay, which empire are you going to be a part of? Which son of David are you going to be? And he made it really obvious from the start which son of David he was going to be. He said things like this. He didn't go, blessed are the powerful, blessed are the conquerors. He said, blessed are the peacemakers. He didn't say, blessed are you who have everything together, who know what's going on, who are just easy, you're low maintenance. He said, blessed are the poor in spirit. And instead of spending his time with the rich, with the elite, with the in crowd, and I assure you, even in Bible times, there was an in crowd, instead of spending his time with those people, he spent time with the broken, with the poor, with the bottom barrel class of society. And he did some amazing things. And the incredible thing is that the people just flocked to him. They thought he was absolutely amazing. They said, he teaches in a way that we've never heard before. He teaches like one, and they said, who has authority. He teaches like someone who knows what he's talking about. And he did miracles, and the people were just drawn to him. And because of that, the leaders in that day, who were a part of the Empire of Bricks, couldn't handle that they were losing power and that they were losing influence. And so they do what you do if you're a part of the Empire of Bricks that's built on power and force, and all of a sudden you start losing that power. It's the same thing that the third person alive did to the fourth person alive. Cain was jealous of Abel, and so he took him out to a field, and he murdered him. Now, these people in this day and age, they were more sophisticated. They had laws, so they couldn't just drag people out to a field. They actually put him on trial, on a faulty trial, and they accuse him of all these things that he never did. And after they're done with that faulty trial, they couldn't, by their law, actually kill him. And so they take him to the Roman government, which was occupying them at that point in time. And they take him before the Roman government, and they tell them all these charges that have been going on. And the Roman officials go, he didn't do that. I mean, this guy has done nothing wrong. But then they see something. Because the Roman government at that point in time was the empire of bricks. They were the greatest empire in the entire world. And they were about power and they were about force. And the officer in that region, his job was to keep the peace. That was the only thing he had to do. Collect taxes and keep the peace. And if he did that, he would gain more and more power along the way. And he sees this thing going on, and he sees this innocent man and all these people just disrupted in this chaos around him. And he goes, you know what, if there's a riot, I'm going to lose my job. If there's a riot, I'm going to lose my position, my power. And so he does what you do if you're a part of the Empire of Bricks. He whips him, and he takes him up onto a hill called the Mount of Skulls, and he hung him up on a cross, and there he crucified him between two criminals. And we go, what? This was supposed to be like the great collision between the two empires, when the empire of love meets the empire of force. And this is where the battle was supposed to happen. And he crucified him. I want to fast forward 20 years real quickly. Jesus had a group of followers. At this point in time, they're starting to be referred to as the Christians. The more common term for them at this point was the followers of the way. They didn't really have a way to describe him. They have multiplied, and they have grown, and they have expanded over the years. And they're being persecuted still. Many of them are being martyred. Not so much by the Jewish people, who were the ones who wanted Jesus killed. It's now by the Roman authorities. It's now by the actual people who were supremely responsible for killing Jesus. The reason why they were killing them is because they were living in such a different way, they couldn't really understand what was going on. They were scared of them. They were afraid of them because they couldn't understand why someone would live how they did. They did three distinct things that set them apart. The first one was really, really simple. They sold everything they have, and they gave to those who had need. While everyone else in the world was like, I get a better job and we buy nicer furniture, and then I get a raise and we buy a nicer car, and it's more and more and more stuff. They went, you know what, I don't need this. And so they would just sell it, and they would go, who needs it? Seriously, who has a need? And I'll just give it away, it doesn't matter. And they did that. The second thing they did is they wouldn't quit talking about Jesus. Now, there's this belief, and I'm not making a comment either way on it. You see the conversation most common in our war on terror today. And the idea is, why go after the leader? If you go after the leader, if you kill him, someone else will just take its place. And I'm not making a comment either way on that, but there are people for and there are people against that. And that was kind of the thought back here. Here, Jesus is leading this movement. If we kill him, then maybe it'll just disperse. Maybe it'll just scatter. I mean, somebody may take his place, but maybe it'll just fizzle out. And they wouldn't quit talking about Jesus, and this is what they said. They said, oh yeah, you killed him. But he came back. Imagine how infuriating that is. I mean, they could handle somebody else stepping up and taking his place and going, okay, I'm going to lead it now, and I'm going to do this. And then they just go after him. But instead they said this, oh yeah, I understand. You cut off the head. But he came back. I mean, I know you killed him. You could kill him again if you wanted to. But he'd come back. Just because that's what he does. He just comes back. And they wouldn't quit talking about it, and this so infuriated them. But then they did a third thing which really got them in trouble, and it was how they greeted each other. You see, how you greet someone says a lot about you. If you're more formal, you may give a good morning, good evening, how are you today? If you're less formal, you may be more, hey, what's up? How's it going? If you still think 1995 is cool and Budweiser commercials, you may give a "what's up," which I would like to say as a sidebar is not appropriate, please. But in the Roman Empire, they had a really unique way of greeting each other. Whether it was morning, evening, or afternoon, whether you were formal or informal, whenever you came across somebody, whether it was a friend, family member, or someone you did not know, your standard greeting was, "Caesar is Lord." That's what you said, no matter who it was. You said, "Caesar is Lord." And the reason why you said that is because they wanted in every greeting for you to declare allegiance to the emperor of the greatest empire of bricks in the world. And the interesting thing on it is that the Romans conquered many different people of many different faiths and religions. And what they did, they didn't tell people, you can't worship your God. They actually saw it as really, really strategic, and they were brilliant in that way. They said, okay, you have idols, you have gods, this is what we're going to do. We conquer you, we're going to put them in the Roman pantheon, and you can come there and you can worship them whenever you want. You can worship any god you want, that's not a problem. But this is the one thing that we ask, that you declare your allegiance first to Caesar. Now, the followers of the way, these early Christians, they weren't okay with that. And so instead of declaring allegiance to Caesar, they had a different way of greeting each other. Whether it was a friend, family member, or stranger, someone who they knew was a Christian, or someone who they didn't know if they were a Christian. Whenever they came across them, they would say, "Jesus is Lord." And the Romans couldn't quite figure that out. They went, yeah, you can worship him. Just declare allegiance to Caesar first. And they went, no, that's not okay. Because Jesus is the only one who we declare allegiance to. So we're not okay even saying Caesar is Lord and then worshiping him the rest of the time. We in every single interaction have to say, Jesus is Lord. And because of that, they were persecuted. Paul actually saw God's power working through this. This is what he writes. He says that I tell you that no one who is speaking by the Spirit of God says, Jesus be cursed, which we usually take that first half of that verse today, and that's where we put the importance, and we say, okay, that's how you tell whether someone is teaching truth or not, based upon what they say about Jesus. And that is a great application for that verse. But his emphasis is on the second half. And he says, and no one can say, Jesus is Lord, except by the power of the Holy Spirit. And this is why that simple statement put their lives at risk. And he said, no one has the boldness, no one has the courage to declare that unless if God's Spirit is actually working through them. You see, up until that point in time, their persecution of Christians, if I can say it like this, it was kind of scattered. It was whoever was loudest maybe would be killed for their faith. Now, I'm not trying to lessen that because that's a very, very serious deal. I'm just saying at this point in time, it's not systematic. And then in 64 AD, something really interesting happens. A great fire breaks out in Rome, and it devastated the economy. I mean, people were struggling for years and years after that. And it started in this really, really poor part of town. This group of people who were kind of opposed to the emperor. And so this rumor started spreading that it was the emperor himself, who at that point in time was Nero. People were saying that Nero started the fire. And this is what Tacitus, who is a secular historian, he's not a Christian, who lived around that time, writes. He says, to get rid of the report, Nero fastened the guilt and inflicted the most exquisite torture on a class hated for their abominations, called Christians. He says to get rid of that report that it was on Nero, he said, the Christians started it. And this is what happens as a result. Again, this is not the Bible. This is a secular historian reporting on this. He said a vast multitude were convicted, not so much of the crime of incendiarism as of hatred of the human race. And in their deaths they were made the subjects of sport. For they were wrapped in the hides of wild beasts, and torn to pieces by dogs, or nailed to crosses, or set on fire, and when day declined, were burned to serve for nocturnal lights. I want to make sure we're really clear on what that last one was. They would, at certain intersections in the city of Rome, major intersections, They would take these Christians who professed Jesus was Lord, and they would hang them, they would fasten them up there to make sure they were secure, and they would set them on fire close to night, so that as it turned from dusk to dark, the city would be lit up. These were the first street lamps, but they did not use electricity. They were Christians being burned on a stick. The most common way that they were actually martyred was not as part of the street lamps, it was part of the Colliseum. Now, if you're unfamiliar with the Colosseum, it is a huge, massive structure. It is 610 feet long. It's the length of 2 football fields, and it's 157 feet high. Just to give you a common barrier for that, if you've been in the Bengals Stadium, in Paul Brown Stadium, the highest seat in that stadium is 157 feet high. So it's 2 football fields long, and it's about as tall as Paul Brown Stadium. It can seat 50,000 spectators. It's amazing architecturally. At that point in time, most of the structures that were anywhere near that side were built into a hillside or built into a mountain to support it. It was completely freestanding in the center of the city of Rome, and it stood there seating 50,000 people. And it's interesting, if you research it today, the most common people, when they talk about the Colosseum today, they say things like, the way that the history goes on, they say it wasn't really used for persecution and martyrdom of Christians. It was used for all other things. But if you read the historians back from the 1st and 2nd century, they go, that may not have been its purpose, but that's the most common usage of the Colosseum, was to crucify and murder Christians. It was actually called Nero's circus, because the emperor, that's the main way that he used it, is to make games. The 3 ones that stand out the most. One time he did this, I'll give it to him, it was creative. He brought in grass and sod from all over Rome, and he brought in these different trees and shrubs along the way. And what he did is he had Roman officials throughout what looked like a forest. And then in one of the entrances, he released a bunch of Christians, and 50,000 spectators got to sit and watch as the Roman officials hunted the Christians right in front of them, like animals. Another common way that they did has been made popular through the movie Gladiator, where they used lions and other animals of that, or sometimes they played war games, where they gave the Christians minimal weapons, while the other groups had chariots and horses and swords and all things. The only difference is, unlike the movie Gladiator, there was no former general who had been displaced to lead them in battle. At this point in time, it was pretty much a massacre every time. The third one that really stands out is one time in the Colosseum, Nero just said, you know what, we're just going to get rid of all of them. I just want to be done with this. I'm tired of it. I want it to be finished. And so he hatched this great plan. He said, we're going to crucify every single one of them until there is no one left to say Jesus is Lord. And so they lined them up in the Colosseum, and they started hanging them up on crosses as close to each other as they possibly could. And they said that after they had done that for a while, 2 interesting things happened. The first one was that they crucified so many of them. And you have to see, the floor of the Colosseum is about the size of a football field, and it's built up some. That they crucified so many of them that it flooded the floor of the Colosseum with their blood. And that those who were doing the crucifixions had to wait around in 2 feet of blood that had been spilled out. And the other thing that happened was they ran out of wood. They thought as soon as we keep crucifying them, these other Christians are gonna wise up, and they're going to go, I'm not going to say that anymore. I'm going to say Caesar is Lord. They didn't run out of people who were willing to profess Jesus as Lord. They ran out of wood to crucify them. And you look at that and you go, okay, so who won? I mean, Jesus was supposed to bring the empire of bricks, the empire of force, in contrast with the empire of God, the empire of love. And we go, who won? It looks obvious, doesn't it? The empire of force wins. Right? Look at it in your life. Don't they? Doesn't the empire of force win over and over again? Doesn't the pushy person get their way? Doesn't the person who's obnoxious and is so focused on themselves get more than everyone else? Doesn't the person who bends or breaks the rules to get ahead actually get ahead? And we look at it and we go, of course the empire of force wins. I mean, it was true back then. It's exactly the same way true today. Those who care most about themselves get the most. And we know, nice guys, nice girls, people who care, people who are kind, they always finish last. The empire of force wins. If you go to the Colliseum today, it looks very similar to what it was back then. Back then there were 80 entrances. Of those 80 entrances, all of them were numbered except for 4. 76 of the entrances were numbered. 4 of them were not. 2 of them were entrances for nobles or other high officials. The other 2, one was for the emperor, for himself to enter, and the last one was for the gladiators, or the Christians who were about to be martyred to enter. Of those entrances, about 30 to 40 of them still stand today. If you look at the inside of the Colosseum, you can see that it's aged over the years, and it's had some decay because of earthquakes and other things along the way. But by and large, the entire structure still stands. Nothing really has been added over the years. Nothing really has changed. Except there are 2 things that are different about the Colosseum today. If you were to go there today and you were either to walk in the emperor's entrance or the entrance where the Christians would go in to be crucified, one thing has been added. It was put there in the 17th century by the Pope. And he put it there as a tribute and a memorial to all the Christians who died there. And that's when you realize, here we are 2,000 years later, and we're talking about Jesus, not Nero. Here we are 2,000 years later, and people all over the world are not gathering together to worship the emperor of the greatest empire of bricks the world has ever seen. People gather all over the world to worship a Jewish carpenter who was murdered by that empire. The only reason why we know the names Nero or Herod or even many of the Caesars today is when it's in relation to the Christians and apostles who they killed. And that's why they're common names, and that's why they're common language. And you look at that and you go, oh my goodness, force doesn't win. Love wins. There's a cross hanging in the Colosseum today. And I believe this. I believe if you went back and you asked those Christians who were being crucified side by side, and you went up to them and you went, can you imagine a day in this place of death where you are being killed next to your friends and your family members and your parents and your children? Can you imagine a day when there is a cross hanging in this place of death? Their answer would have been yes, because they knew at that point in time that force doesn't win. They knew right then and there that love wins. I want to show you this. This is in Romans chapter 8. This is Paul writing, who was eventually killed for his faith in very much the same way. He writes this in verse 18, I consider that our present sufferings are not worth comparing with the glory that will be revealed in us. Now, normally when we read this verse, we read present sufferings. And I've heard this taught many times, and it's usually talked about like this. It's when you're a follower of Christ and people make fun of you. Or when, because you're a Christian, you don't do certain things that everybody else does. Or you have to serve for a couple hours a week. Or sometimes you give your money and so you have a little bit less. Or for some of you men, you wake up at 6:30 to set up curtains. And we go, present sufferings. Can I be really clear? I'm not trying to make light of that. But could we just be honest that our present sufferings are not even in the same ballpark of what they're talking about here? Because we go present sufferings and we think, oh, these are my present sufferings. They were killed. Like they went to bed at night and they went, tomorrow we may all be crucified. It's actually pretty likely. Good night. Imagine tucking your kids into bed at night with that. And you go, are we going to be killed tomorrow? I don't know. Jesus is Lord. I mean, that's their present sufferings. It's not comparable to what we have today. And this is what they actually write. I consider that our present sufferings are not worth comparing with the glory that will be revealed in us. Now, normally when we read this, we think of heaven. But I want to show you that Paul is actually talking about what's happening right now. This is how he continues. The creation waits in eager expectation for the sons of God to be revealed. He's saying that the world is watching and waiting, and it's saying that it is anxious. The world is on the edge of its seat. People are just anxious for us to move out of this kingdom of power and force that's about us. It's about our way. And it's anxious for it to move into this other kingdom that's about God, that's about people, that is about love. It's saying that it's anticipating it. He continues on, verse 20. For the creation was subjected to frustration, not by its own choice, but by the will of the one who subjected it, in hope that the creation itself will be liberated from its bondage to decay and brought into the glorious freedom of the children of God. He's saying the world is watching and waiting and hoping that we are going to move out of this present empire that we're in and into a different one. That we're going to move out of an era where force and power win. And that is how we live our lives. And we're going to move into an era where we understand it's not about us, it's about God. And that love ultimately wins. I'm going to skip a few verses. This is what he says in 26. He says, in the same way, the Spirit helps us in our weakness. We do not know what we ought to pray for, but the Spirit himself intercedes for us with groans that words cannot express. This is what you need to take out of that. Paul is saying that the very same Spirit that was enabling the first Christians who were facing crucifixion to say, Jesus is Lord, the very same Spirit that was giving them the power to declare that, even though death awaited them if they did, the Spirit that was helping them live in that way, he says that very same Spirit's helping you today. And it's helping you move out of an empire of power and into an empire of love. It's helping you shift your decisions and how you live your life out of a focus on you and onto a focus on God, because love ultimately wins. When people are annoying and aggravating, love wins. When people are really, really hard to deal with, love wins. When you're really, really tired and really, really frustrated and it feels like you never get your way or you never get the advantage, love wins. That force and power may seem to hold the advantage for a while, but in the end, love wins. I'm going to need your help. Teenagers, students, when your parents ride you over and over again and you are so frustrated and you are so tired and you are so sick of it and you just want to rebel because that's about all you can do at that point in time and you want to use force to get your way, who wins? Who wins, teenagers? Who wins? I'll stay here as long as I have to. Who wins? Robert Poe, who wins? Does love win? Thanks. Parents, maybe you'll do a little better. When you are so sick of your kids and they do the same stupid thing over and over again and you want nothing more to do than to grab them by the collar and pull them close and tell them what a moron they are and how much they're messing up their life, who wins? Thank you. Spouses, when you're so tired and you're so frustrated and the person who you lie in bed with at night doesn't seem like the same person that you married, and you're not going to leave because then everybody will talk about you. And so your decision is to stay and to just do what you want. Who wins? A little louder, spouses. People who work for a boss. When your boss does the same stupid thing over and over again, and you want to go back nothing more to your friends and tell them what an idiot they are and how they could do it better and how you have no idea how they got promoted to that position to begin with, and you think force wins. Seriously. Don't say it for my sake. Say it for your sake. Who wins? When you're tired and you're frustrated and you feel like you've served over and over and over again, and you just go, I want nothing more than to sit back and do nothing because I deserve it and I've done enough. And there's needs that you can meet and people who you can help. Who wins? Let me be real clear on this. You're not saying it for me. Don't say it if you don't believe it. I mean, seriously, don't say it if you don't believe it. But this is why I'm doing this, is because we get stuck over and over again, and we get caught up, and we believe that the empire of bricks wins. And we believe that's the only way that we can live. And we believe this is what it's all about. And we need a reminder over and over and over again that we need to shift from this empire to this kingdom. Because in the end, this kingdom is what it's about. And so when you're standing there, and you've got your group of friends, and the new person walks in, but you don't need to talk to them, because you already have a group of friends. Please tell me who wins. We have a couple songs after this, and I don't know if you guys are getting where I'm going, but I will say this until you get it. And I am dead serious about that. Thank you. Thank you. This is my hope. It would be really easy for us to gather every week and to make it comfortable and to make it nice. If I could be really honest with you, that's how you grow a church. You make it really comfortable and you make it really nice. I want to be about something far bigger than that. I want to be about transformation. I want to be about moving from a kingdom that's about us to a kingdom that's about God. And so maybe you'll be a little more comfortable if we don't do it out loud. Let's do this. If we could all just bow our heads in prayer real quickly. And I'm going to guide you on this a little bit. You have a situation that when we say empire of bricks that comes out clearer than any other. You have something that sticks out to you. It's a relationship that has fallen apart. It's something that is no longer working. It's a situation that you face. It could be in your family, it could be a friend, it could be that person who just ticks you off more than anyone else. And you don't know how to handle it. And you find yourself falling again and again and again into a way of life that is about you, that's about your way. I want you to remember, I want you to right now ask for the same Spirit who allowed them to say Jesus is Lord, to ask for the strength to live in that situation. To not be a part of the empire of bricks, but to be a part of the kingdom of love. Because you know you can't do it on your own. And all you can do is beg and plead that the same God who rose from the dead, who was crucified on the cross, would give you the strength in that moment. And so ask him for that. I can't give it to you. Ask him for that. Father, as we all have our heads bowed together in prayer, God, I want us as much as we can to move off of our agenda and onto yours. That we would understand, even the best of us, even the seemingly most kind and the nicest of us, that we would understand that it is not about us and our way of life, that it is about you, that you have a better plan, that you have a better way of living, and that you understand that we can live through that power. That you are enabling us to live in a different way. And I pray this in your Son, Jesus' name. Amen. My hope is this for you, and I'm dead serious about this. Go ahead and give me some lights. My hope is this, that as you face that moment that's really, really hard, whether it's a person or an event or the same situation over and over again, and the reason why I think we struggle with it is not because it's awkward in a large group, is because I think sometimes deep down we don't believe it. I want you to remember that today there does not stand a monument to the emperors of force. Then when you feel like it's all done, that you can't do anything else, that you're tired of serving, that you're tired of giving, that you're tired of helping, you're waiting for someone else to rise up to do something else because you've done so much, and you just want to sit back and you want to go, that's it. My relationship with my kids, I'm done. That's it. My relationship with my spouse, I'm not trying anymore. That's it. This person or that person or whatever I'm come across with, and you're just thinking, I just don't care anymore. I want you to remember that today in the Colliseum there stands a cross.